This video is the fourth video in a series that is designed to help you give useful information to Jehovah's Witnesses so that they can make an informed decision about their religious beliefs. It is intended to do for the witness what you would want done for you if you were a witness. Throughout this series, you must keep in mind the principles of Colossians chapter 4, verses 5 and 6, and 1 Peter 3:15, and follow them, being gracious and respectful of the Jehovah's Witnesses' beliefs. You're studying with the Jehovah's Witnesses in their favorite publication, this book, What Does the Bible Really Teach? Reading each paragraph and giving your thoughts. This video series discusses only those issues that are in this book that are contrary to the mainstream evangelical community. In each video, I give you background information and then suggest what to say and what questions to ask. As you read the rest of their book, let the witness know that their explanation is acceptable within the mainstream evangelical community, even though you may not personally believe it. It's accepted within the community. You will introduce each disputable issue by saying something like this. You'll say, I remember from chapter 1 in this book, paragraph 4 and paragraph 23, that your book said I should ask questions and to continue to search for satisfying answers because I want the truth from the Bible. So I do have a question. There is an issue in this paragraph that I wish to understand better. The way it is worded is a new thought to me, and my religious community explains it differently. So I need your help to sort this out. So you introduce it and then proceed into the issue. Now this particular video, which is the fourth video in the series, discusses page 41 in this book, paragraph 11, and the issue is where they mention the firstborn of all creation. The paragraph introduces Jesus as God's most precious Son, the firstborn of all creation. See Colossians 1:15. And they claim this means Jesus was God's first created thing. I want you to write down some verses. You could write them on a piece of paper, or you could write them in the margin of your book. There's not much margin here, so you may need another piece of paper. Write down 1 Chronicles 5:1. That's 1 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 1, dash, Psalm 89, verses 20 and 27. Then another verse, Hebrews 12:23, and the word plural. Okay? Write the word firstborn ones. Okay? Now, here is the issue. I'm going to give you the background information. Their translation, which says firstborn of all creation, is not in all translations. It is not what scholars now believe is the meaning of this Greek word, which is prototokos, and we'll find out that in another verse, Hebrews 12:23, it's also there in the Greek, and it doesn't mean firstborn like in a sequence, the first one born in a sequence. It doesn't always mean that, because the word firstborn has two meanings. They're related, but they're different. We're going to see it in the Old Testament, Hebrew, and in the New Testament. It's carried over in the New Testament. And those two meanings are, one is firstborn, like the first child. Often the male, it's referring to the male, first male son. It couldn't be the first female, though. But it has another meaning that goes with it, and that is that the firstborn child often, not always, often is given an authority, the firstborn son is given authority over the entire home. That's called the rights of firstborn. But they don't always go together. Sometimes the one who is not firstborn in sequence is given the rights of firstborn, that is, they're first in priority. And we're going to see that if you turn to 1 Chronicles 5:1, you'll find out there that Jacob, who has 12 sons, one of his sons, Reuben, was the firstborn in sequence. But he is not the first one in priority. That went to his other son, Joseph, and Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. So there is an example, again, 1 Chronicles 5:1, where the one who is firstborn in sequence is not the firstborn one in priority. They're related, but there are two different meanings. And we can see that if you turn to Psalm 89, verses 20 and 27. there, check any Bible. In verse 20, it's talking about David. But then in verse 27, you'll see God says, I'm going to make him my firstborn over all the kings of the earth. Well, David was not the firstborn son. He was the lastborn in his family amongst his siblings. Yet it says God will make him the firstborn. Well, how will he make him the firstborn? Not the first one in sequence. That can't be done. But he will make him the firstborn because he will be over all. And this is a prophecy about Jesus, that he is a descendant of David. He will be the firstborn. It has nothing to do with sequence. You can't be made first in a sequence, a chronological sequence, but you can be made first in priority in rulership. Now we're going to come to the New Testament because, of course, the verse that they're referring to in Colossians 1:15 is in the New Testament. In Hebrews 12:23, there is a reference to firstborn, but it's in the plural. It's prototokon. And in this verse, I'm going to read it out of the New World Translation, the Jehovah's Witnesses Bible. It says, well, I'll give you the context from verse 22. But you have approached to Mount Zion and a city of the living God, heavenly Jerusalem, and myriads of angels in general assembly, and the congregation of the firstborn who have been enrolled in the heavens. That's referring to what they would call the anointed, or we would say born-again Christians, who are the firstborn and are enrolled in heavens. Now, in the Greek Bible of the Jehovah's Witnesses, which is their kingdom interlinear, there it has the word prototokon, and in the English it says, the translation, firstborn ones. It's plural. How do you have the firstborn if the first one, if it's a sequence, like a chronological sequence, how do you have plurality in the first? Well, as you look at this context, it's talking about the anointed Christians or the born-again Christians. Who are the firstborn? Who would they be if it's sequence? Who are the first? Would it be the first ones to believe? Well, the first one to believe in Jesus was John the Baptist, and he did not receive the Holy Spirit in his life here on earth. So who are the firstborn ones? It's all of those who will be reigning with Christ, all of those enrolled in the heavens. That's more than one, yet they are all firstborn ones, meaning that they all have that priority, not chronological sequence, but rank, and they are ranked first because they reign with Christ. So that's what's mentioned here, and that's what this word means that's translated firstborn at Colossians 1:15. In the Old Testament, there are two possible meanings, and even in the New, it could mean the firstborn child, but more often it's referring to the first one in priority, in rank. To show that, you can mention that there are translations that don't read firstborn in this verse, or not, certainly not as a sequence. In this Bible, the Contemporary English Version, it does use the word firstborn, but not in the sense of first of sequence. It says, Christ is exactly like God, who cannot be seen. He is the firstborn son, superior to all creation. So there you may say, well, it's a little ambiguous. It says firstborn son, not the firstborn, but the firstborn son, because they're trying to capture the idea, which we saw from the Old Testament, such as with David in Psalms 89, that he's first in rank, not first in sequence. Another is the New Living Translation. This reads, he existed before anything was created and is supreme over all creation. This one, the New Century Version, reads, no one can see God, but Jesus Christ is exactly like him. He ranks higher than everything that has been made. So there is an example of another example that doesn't say firstborn, giving the idea of first in a sequence that is born, but rather in rank. Then there's this, the New English Bible, and its revision, the Revised English Bible. Both of them have, well, this says, his is the primacy over all creation. Again, referring to rank and priority not sequence. So this is what you want to say. That was the background information, and this is what you're going to say. When you get to this paragraph, you introduce it and say, there's something here that I'm puzzled about. My community would just explain it a little bit differently, and I need to understand it. Can you help me? My community refers to other translations, such as the New Century Version or the Contemporary English Version, and some verses that would indicate that firstborn doesn't necessarily mean first in sequence, but it means primarily first in rank. And I'd like to understand it and see what you know about this. And my community would refer to verses such as Hebrews 12:23, where this Greek word refers to those who are going to heaven, that they are all first in rank along with Jesus over the rest of creation. Or Psalm 89:20 and 27, where it speaks prophetically that David will become firstborn. Not because he's the first in sequence, but because he would be first in rank over all the nations. This is prophetically speaking of Jesus. So can you help me understand that? Then let the witness go and explain it and research it and say whatever they're going to say. Listen to what they have to say, and don't argue with them. Just say, well, I'm going to think about that and think about what I've seen, and I'll just chew on that and ponder it, and let's just move on to the next subject, and I'll just give this some thought and think about it for a while. Don't argue with it, just let them go on and move on to the next subject.